All right then. Welcome to the Director's Chair podcast. I am your host, Basil Sharp, and with me is my co-host, Sky Boyer. Hello, Sky. How's it going?
Hey, hello. It's me. I'm trapped inside this house.
Well, aren't
But
we
it's
all?
nice to see you, man.
Oh, thank you. Even though we're not really seeing each other, but
Yeah, haha.
that's the way things are right now. All in our little fallout shelters.
That
Um,
be how it be.
that do be how it be. Yeah, it's crazy times, unprecedented times, some would say. Except there is precedent for it, just not in our lifetimes. Um,
Yeah.
anyways, back to the issue at hand, I guess I'd call it. Well, this podcast is all about the finer workings of filmmaking, with focus being specifically on directors. I want to give you an in-depth discussion about various types of directors and how their work has impacted the film scene as a whole. Today we're going to talk about a couple of sibling directors, the Coen brothers. Joel Coen, born November 29th, 1954, and Ethan Coen, born September 21st, 1957, collectively referred to as the Coen brothers, are American filmmakers. Their films span many genres and styles, which they frequently subvert or parody. Their most acclaimed works include Miller's Crossing from 1990, Barton Fink from 1991, Fargo from 1996, The Big Lebowski from 1998, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? From 2000, No Country for Old Men from 2007, Burn After Reading from 2008, True Grit from 2010, Inside Llewyn Davis from 2013, and The Ballad of Buster Scruggs is their most recent movie from 2018. That is quite a large body of work by them, if I do say
Yes.
so myself. It's really something special. And before we get into talking about that body of work, we have a little bit of a scene read. So, Sky, we're going to be doing a scene from The Big Lebowski. I will
Okay.
take the part of Walter. You can do the dude. You can also play the part of Ronnie, because he only has like 2 lines.
I believe it says Donnie. Okay.
I've heard it both ways. I'm tired.
We are tracking in on a circular bench towards a big man nursing a large plastic cup of bud. He has dark, worried eyes and a goatee. Hairy legs emerge from his khaki shorts. He also wears a khaki army surplus shirt with sleeves cut off over a old bowling shirt. This is Walter. He squints through the smoke from his own cigarette as he addresses the dude at the scoring table. The dude, also holding a large plastic cup of bud, wears some of its foam as a mustache. Walter.
This was a valued rug.
He elaborately clears his throat. Walter.
This was a...
Dude.
Yeah, man. It really tied the room together.
Walter.
This was valued. Huh.
Donnie, the strike scoring bowler, enters and sits next to Walter. Donnie.
What tied the room together, dude?
Walter.
Were you listening to the story, Donnie?
Donnie.
What?
Walter.
Were you listening to the dude's story?
Donnie.
I was bowling.
Walter.
So you have no frame of reference, Donnie. You're like a child who wanders in the middle of a movie and wants to know...
Dude.
What's your point, Walter?
Walter.
There's no fucking reason. Here's my point, dude. There's no fucking reason.
Donnie.
Yeah, Walter. What's your point?
Walter.
Huh?
Dude.
What's the point of... We all know who's at fault. So what the fuck are you talking about?
Walter.
Huh, no? What the fuck are you I'm not... We're talking about unchecked aggression here.
Donnie.
What the fuck is he talking about?
Dude.
You have
My
to...
rug?
Walter.
Forget it, Donnie. You're out of your element.
Dude.
This Chinaman who peed on my rug. I can't go give him a bill, so what the fuck are you talking about?
Walter.
What the fuck are you talking about? This Chinaman is not the issue. I'm talking about drawing a line in the sand, dude. Across this line, you do not... And also, dude, Chinaman is not the preferred, Asian American, please.
Dude.
Walter, this is not a guy who built the railroads. Here, this is a guy who peed on my...
Walter.
What the fuck are you?
Dude.
Walter, he peed on my rug.
Donnie.
He peed on the dude's rug.
Walter.
You're out of your element. This Chinaman is not the issue, dude.
Dude.
So who?
Walter.
Jeff Lebowski. Come on. The other Jeffrey Lebowski. The millionaire. He's gonna be easier to find anyway than these two. And he has the wealth, the resources, obviously. And there's no reason, no fucking reason, why his wife should go out and owe money and they pee on your rug. Am I wrong?
Dude.
No, but...
Walter.
Am I wrong?
Dude.
Yeah, but...
Walter.
Okay,
He elaborately clears his throat.
That rap really tied the room together, did it not?
Dude.
Fucking A.
Donnie.
And this guy peed on it.
Walter.
Donnie, please.
Dude.
Yeah, I could find this Lebowski guy.
Donnie.
His name is Lebowski? What's your name, dude?
Dude.
Yeah, this is the guy. This guy should compensate me for the fucking rug. I mean, his wife goes out and owes money, and they peed on my rug.
Walter.
That's right, dude. They pee on your fucking rug.
End scene.
Alright, end scene. Gosh dang it. The writing is so good.
I'm over here, like, confused because I don't remember the original scene.
You know, it's like my favorite scene from the whole movie. It's in the bowling alley. It's pretty early on.
Having no context for it, just reading it out of, like, complete no idea what's going on, it just seems like the most nonsensical thing.
Right? It's like, it doesn't...
I kind of love it.
It doesn't matter. Like, they're talking about nothing. That's kind of like the point of the movie, is it's about nothing. It's really, I don't know, it's one of my favorite movies. So we're going to get into a couple of the discussion about the Coen Brothers. And we'll start with, what do you think their most iconic film is?
Fargo.
Okay, all right then. All right. Well, let's get into that. Why is Fargo their most iconic film?
Okay, so I watched Fargo when I was in high school because it was part of one of my I had like a film and lit class where we examined how they take something and turn it from like a written script or a piece of literature and then adapt it, or rather how they also talk about like the various different types of plots and stuff that occur in a film. And we talked about Fargo, and because we were talking about the concept of dark comedies, and that was what my teacher led into with that particular film. He felt Fargo was one of the best examples, and I can't think of another movie that has this like weird satirical look at oh god, I'm actually forgetting where Fargo takes place. I should have been thinking about this.
It's Minnesota, right? Or Wisconsin?
Yeah. So everyone's got this kind of like Minnesota edge, and it's really, really, really great. And even their dialect fits it, and they just have the most nonchalant kind of like attitude towards everything going on, even though it's all about like a murder and trying to uncover what's going on with this. And you also follow the events of the two would-be murderers, and they're the worst in like a great way. It's that sort of character writing that like made me realize how much I like the way the Coen Brothers write like not likable characters, because they're still idiots with like this interesting little like bend to their character, which is something that is like completely subversive later on when they write when they ended up doing No Country for Old Men, because the antagonist in that is a completely horrible human being.
Well, see, that's the thing. For me, I've actually never seen Fargo. It's one of like the most famous movies I've never seen, and it's definitely one of the ones I'm embarrassed about not seeing. I gotta watch it. But that being said, I have seen a lot of parts from it, and I recognize a lot of like the famous like imagery and stuff from it. Like there's that over the top scene of the snow that's shot like so amazingly well, and I like whenever I think of iconic shots from any movie, even though I haven't seen the entirety of Fargo, I think of that shot. As somebody who's like only seen probably like a third of the work of the Coen Brothers, the movie that always stuck out to me. Well, it's funny because you mentioned No Country for Old Men, and that's kind of what I want to get into talking about, because No Country for Old Men is like I have a very interesting relationship with that film, because I hated it when I first watched it. I was like, what the heck? You set up this hero character, and there's a lot of stuff, and it's because the movie, it subverts kind of everything you expect out of like a Western and what's going to happen. And like the antagonist, it's almost like poetry in film form. Like the antagonist isn't a human being in the traditional sense. Like he's not a character who has like a deep backstory and stuff. The point of the antagonist to me is he always kind of represented like, and this is kind of what made me appreciate the film more, is the antagonist is he's like the inevitable approachment of death. Like he's this weird, quirky, but also like extremely deadly character that we don't understand, and we're not supposed to understand. and like that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. The main character, he gets this money and he's trying to like, get out of that area, and like, but he just wants to provide for his life. His wife, Josh Brolin's character, that is, and it doesn't matter because as soon as he was on that around that shootout, that area, and as soon as he touched that money, he was dead because I can't remember his name, but Javier Bardem was coming after him. And I mean, it's funny because it's based off a novel. I don't know. Have you read the book?
No.
Yeah,
Wow.
we're film students, not literature students. Also, Javier Bardem's character's name is Anton Chigurh or something. So I don't know how it's pronounced.
Yeah, Anton Chigurh.
Yeah. One thing I like also is he's very ethnically ambiguous. His character, he's not like given a specific race or creed, or there's not something that you can get of like I said, how his motivations are almost primal. Like this is his job, and there's no escape from it. Like you can slow him down. I mean, you can run him over with a car, but you can't kill him.
Yeah, he's kind of like this constant. He's always there, or he's always like in the back of your mind. And they do this really well in the way they shoot the film as well. Is like he's always there, like he's coming. Even if he's like not immediately there, he also leaves things in his wake. Like, if you get what I mean by that,
Yeah.
he's such an interesting like force of evil. I remember that like he's supposed to. This interpretation I had when I watched it, because I had to watch it as part of another class, we talked about how he's essentially the embodiment of true evil in a way. Like he represents what is evil, and that's the perspective they were going for. So we wanted like some kind of antagonist who represents everything bad that there is in the world, and he just kind of is, because there's nothing redeemable about him, but at the same time there's this interesting aspect of like that coin flip he does.
Oh man, that scene.
Yeah, it makes you realize that maybe he's not evil. Maybe it's just maybe it's just you really are given a chance to make it until you like become part.
Which to me is like kind of digs into like his death aspect of it. To me anyway, is it's a flip of a coin, right? You could die today, you could die tomorrow. Like you never know when your time is coming. You never know when he'll show up, he'll flip the coin and it'll be heads or whatever. What's funny too about that scene is like if you think about what happens out of context, you're like, oh, this dude just flips a coin or whatever. And it's very like the actual activity that's happening is very mundane. It's just like, oh, this quirky dude. But then like the way it's shot and the way the actors carry out that, like the director's vision in that scene, I don't know how you go about directing talent in that scenario. Be like, okay, make this coin flip seem like the end of the actual plan. Like everything in the world depends on a coin flip right now, and it's even though you're just in a gas station or whatever, and there's just one old guy, and Javier Bardem is like he does such a good job in that movie. Whenever I think of that movie, to me the scene that I remember is that coin scene. It's like it's one of those scenes of just drawn out tension, but done in such a spectacular way. I mean, a lot of time movies they feel that whenever they have tension, they have to punctuate it with something. And there is a release of tension in that scene. It's when he doesn't kill the guy or whatever. Usually they feel like just the release of tension isn't enough. A lot of directors feel like, oh, okay, we have to have a jump scare or we have to have an explode, whatever. Like there has to be something, not just the situation just dies. But I think that's also like a part of like the impact of his character. The other character, Lewin or whatever, Josh Brolin's character, it was one of the reasons I hated, but then turned to love this movie, was that they killed him off screen. This dude was kind of our protagonist. I mean, Tommy Lee Jones arguably is the protagonist, I feel like, in the end. But this character is who we were following, and then they like come back to it later, and he's just dead. That's another thing to me is why a lot of this is about death and just like you never know when somebody will die, and you turn away for a second, and he's gone. And like to me, at first when I was watching the movie, I didn't believe it. I was like, oh, okay, so they didn't show him die, so he's not dead, right? Because that's like modern filmmaking or TV making. If a character is not shown to die in a very definitive fashion, they're not dead. But now they're like, he's just dead. They killed him off screen.
It's one of those things I really, really like about No Country for Old Men. It doesn't make his death like a spectacular thing. He doesn't even go out really in like a
No.
blaze of glory or anything. In fact, it's not even Shigor that killed him. It's just some members of a cartel who are highly unrelated for a good chunk of the film.
Yeah.
Like the whole film does a great job of kind of representing how death is always there, but it's not even going to come the way you think it is. It's one of those like moments in No Country for Old Men where it really seals like the theming,
Yeah.
just due to the fact that they could have given Llewellyn a better death. Like they could have made him go out in this like really fantastic way, or even had him succeed in the end, and it still would have been an enjoyable film. But there's something about the sort of cold and I guess like depressing nature, if you want to say it like that, of how his life is just taken without any real like conclusion to his story. Oh, I was gonna say, and that's something that like follows into the fact that then Shigor goes after his wife.
Oh, sorry. That's actually the segue I was looking for because I wanted to talk about his that end part with his wife and kind of like the theme of how. I mean, we don't even see her killed, but we kind of know what happened. And I think that's an interesting thing for a movie that's like a lot about death. We actually don't see that many characters die.
The choice to not kill people like on screen was a thematic choice they made because they wanted to give certain characters more of a maybe being killed off screen is a form of like happy ending essentially.
Well,
If you get what I mean by that.
yeah, I think being killed off screen is like, I don't know, there's a sense of like respect almost to the concept of death in that sense. Like it's not glorifying death, which is to me like something you don't like a lot of movies, the hero goes out in their blaze of glory and it's we have to see them die because that's raw. That's what emotion is. And the Coen Brothers with this were like, well, no, you can still have an extremely powerful story with people dying in it without having those super dramatic scenes of the people dying. To me, it's like a milestone in filmmaking where so many movies for their drama, their narrative drama, rely on death and showing a character die and how it affects the other characters. Whereas this movie, it's almost the opposite. Like they don't show the people dying. They don't show they don't show the wife crying over her dead husband's body or whatever. They show the reaction to it of her going to him or whatever. And then we know what the outcome of that situation is, but they're not spelling it out for us. They're not spoon feeding us, if you will. We are left to figure out for ourselves, which is a lot of like the poetry of it is like, oh, okay, well, you can kind of interpret it in many different ways.
Yeah, no. I understand that like 100%. I can actually see that perspective almost entirely. You give me a lot to think of.
And that's what we're here for on the Directors Podcast, because we're snooty. No, I want to also talk about a couple of the other movies. So Big Lebowski, you mentioned you haven't seen it in a while, right?
No, it's been a very long time. Only seen it like maybe once.
Okay, yeah, I've seen it a couple of times. I definitely really like that film. It's kind of there are a couple parts where it goes into the weird, like very heavily, and you're like, okay, you're kind of pushing it. But there's something very pulpy and fun about the movie. It's funny to me too because it's very much a movie about nothing. Like it's one of those characters who just gets pulled into something that he absolutely has no idea what he's doing and doesn't really care as long as he gets some like a drink out of it. But the funny thing is like the inciting incident is Jeffrey Lebowski, played by Jeffrey Bridges, getting confused for a rich Jeff Lebowski, for cheating on somebody or whatever, or because his wife owes the people money. And then the only reason there's a movie is not because he was like his face is shoved in the toilet and stuff. None of that stuff mattered. It was when they peed on his rug. They peed on his rug. So because they peed on Jeffrey Lebowski's rug, we have a film. And like the events that come afterwards and the escalation of events and just like how this tiny peeing on a rug starting a domino effect that goes on to just cause people to die, and like it's insane and it's hilarious, and the dude is like just great in it. It's funny also because to me it shows like the range of the Coen brothers like directing like prowess. I mean they're very good at comedies, but like they can also do those super very, I mean, there's moments of levity in something like No Country for Old Men, but it's
Yeah,
at the end of the day it's a much more serious film than something like The Big Lebowski.
Fargo has a lot of like dark humor moments. It's a very dark humor driven film. It's something that like yeah, that's I would definitely agree that they know how to write humor because again, you have these two guys who are just completely like the two antagonists, I guess, of Fargo, the two guys who commit the first murder in the film are just totally incompetent, or at least one of them is. And there's this particular scene with a wood chipper that it's been a while, but let me put it this way: seeing someone get put in a wood chipper has never been so funny. Like, is it really weird to say that? But that's the entire point. Is the scene is like weirdly hilarious. I believe what it was is the two guys are putting a or they're putting a body of someone that came to their like hideaway, and they had to kill him, and they're trying to like stuff his body inside of a wood chipper to get rid of it, and they're just like complaining the whole time.
I think I've seen parts of that scene. Like that's a pretty iconic scene from that movie.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah,
And that, to give you an idea, that particular scene sums up the two of them in its entirety. Like, it's great because they're just not at all what you expect. They're not a Shigor who is to be taken seriously.
yeah.
And you as the viewer need to watch out. You as the viewer understand this guy is bad news. You're like, are these two really criminals?
Right.
Like, they're that laughably bad.
So The Battle of Buster Scruggs is a Netflix only movie. But it's a collection of, I believe, 6 different mini movies. Like kind of
Okay.
short stories all put together as one big movie, which is why it kind of works perfectly for Netflix. I do think that they recognized the medium when they decided to make a Netflix movie, and they made like the perfect Netflix movie because you can watch it in chunks however you want. And the first story it's the Battle of Buster Scruggs, the first chapter, and it's about this cowboy who's like the best gunslinger, and it's a musical,
Okay.
and it's super cartoony, and it is hilarious. It's kind of sad because it's about this cowboy who was the peak gunslinger. He was the top dog. The little vignette or short story, whatever you want to call it, is kind of about him being replaced as the top gunslinger because his age is caught up with him, and how there'll be a new gunslinger to overtake him, and then a new gunslinger will overtake the other one. And it's a very simple but effective metaphor on like on the people who are at the top of their craft being replaced by younger, better people. I thought was very fitting for the Coen brothers, who are, I mean, I would still argue are still at the top of their craft, but they're getting up there in age, and like they're not dumb. They're not like they're aware they can't be knocking out Fargos and Big Lebowskis and No Country for Old Men's forever. But
Yeah.
it's a very fitting like story to kind of start off with, and there's some very good ones in there. There's a meme where it's like James Franco at the gallows, and then he says "first time" to somebody else, and like that's been used as a meme a lot. That's from that Battle of Buster Scruggs. Very good
Oh,
collection of short like films. One of them's about this dude who's like a performer, but he has no arms and legs, so he just says like poetry. Liam Neeson plays in that, and then it's like
okay.
it's oh man, it's so good, and it's so effective at like a lot of it's very simple. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, you understand the themes, you understand what the director's trying to say, but he does it in such an effective manner that like it's like a very good painting of like a landscape, and you're like, it's a landscape, right? It's just a simple landscape, but it's beautiful, and it like gets you because it's so well executed. But it's one of those things between, you see movies that are very like ham-fisted with their message. I would argue
Yeah.
something like even like Joker is kind of ham-fisted a little bit, Whereas then you see movies like this, and you're like, even though the message may be more simple than some of the other movies, it's very subtle, and it is very just well told. There's something to be said about being good at directing talent, and the Coen Brothers are fantastic at directing talent. Of getting like performances out of these actors. I mean, they cast amazing actors, but an amazing actor with a bad director is Natalie Portman in Star Wars. You know, like you can have a good actor, but if they don't know what they're trying to, like, if the director doesn't give them good direction, then they're kind of useless. Whereas the Coen Brothers don't really make that mistake.
Okay, yeah, I get that. I can totally see where you're coming from with that. I wanted to go back to that comment you mentioned about how they kind of realize not everything can be a landmark like hit or some kind of like big splash. And a great example of that is I actually want to say True Grit. As someone who I saw True Grit as well, and film is like it's smaller, simpler, not too complex. It's just like their own kind of western or like more traditional western, I guess. And like I like the film; it's very good. It's well made, just like you would expect from a Coen Brothers film. But it definitely feels like it's less a monumental like, whoa, let's reinvent the genre or reinvent things with like No Country for Old Men, Fargo. It's I don't want to say quaint because that feels like it's not giving the film credit, but that's kind of what I want to say.
I know I mean, the word quaint kind of does have like a negative connotation in that way, but also like I would describe something like Huckleberry Finn or whatever as kind of a quaint novel in a sense, but it's still like considered one of the great American novels. There's something to be said about like being quaint in like the positive way, where it's like it's accessible, but it's also deep. So it's like anyone can enjoy this film, but there's a lot to get out of it.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I feel about True Grit is because like it's a well crafted film.
Yeah,
it's got lots of good like story driven and character driven moments. It's got like good action. It's got a great performance by the way. I'm pretty sure it's Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, it's Jeff Bridges.
I hate the fact that the word quaint can't like isn't used often for films without sounding like you're being derogatory towards.
Yeah, or
I would call it. It's a quaint film. I have an entertaining time with it, and it's got a lot of really, really, really good things. But I'm not going to be like, oh man, it's not better than Fargo. It's not better than that. And then that's kind of like an important thing to note is like, I think knowing where your strength lies, what the Coen Brothers already know about themselves, and that's why like I don't hate any of their films. I think that's something that we need to like bring up is like I can't think of a movie I don't like by them that I've seen.
There's like, and our next director we're going to talk about is an example of a director who, like, I don't like some of his films, and with the Coen Brothers, I don't really have that scenario where every single one of their movies that I've seen I've enjoyed, which is why I want to watch more of their movies. I still need to watch Fargo, which I know is once again it's a crime against humanity, but that I haven't seen it. Yeah, there's something to be said about that, about their legacy. But yeah, so well now we're gonna have to make like the killer in No Country for Old Men and just take a quick break. But we'll be back in right a second. Welcome back to the Director's Chair podcast. Speaking of westerns, our next director is famous for subverting the genre as well as many other genres. Quentin Tarantino. Quentin Jerome Tarantino, born March 27th, 1963, is an American filmmaker. His films are characterized by nonlinear storylines, aestheticization of violence, extended scenes of dialogue, ensemble casts, references to popular culture, and a wide variety of other films. Soundtracks primarily containing songs and score pieces from the 1960s to the 1980s, alternate history, and features of neo-noir film. He began his career as an independent filmmaker with the release of Reservoir Dogs in 1992. Empire deemed Reservoir Dogs the greatest independent film of all time. His second film, Pulp Fiction, 1994, a comedy crime film, was a major success among both critics and audiences. Tarantino paid homage to blaxploitation films of the 1970s with Jackie Brown in 1997, an adaptation of Elmore Leonard's novel Rum Punch. Kill Bill, a highly stylized revenge flick in the cinematic traditions of kung fu films, Japanese martial arts, and spaghetti westerns, followed 6 years later and was released as two films, Volume 1 in 2003 and Volume 2 in 2004. His long-postponed Inglourious Basterds, which tells an alternate history of Nazi Germany, was released in 2009 to positive reviews. After that came critically acclaimed Django Unchained in 2012, a Western film set in the antebellum South. His eighth film, The Hateful Eight, in 2015, was released in its roadshow version in 70mm film format, with opening overture and halfway point intermission. His ninth film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, an alternate history of the Tate-Leibonka murders, was released in 2019 as his most recent film. So before we get into discussing a lot about him, we're going to be doing a scene read from Pulp Fiction.
Interior 74 Chevy moving. Morning. An old gas-guzzling, dirty, white 1974 Chevy Nova barrels down a homeless-ridden street in Hollywood. In the front seat are two young fellas, one white, one black, both wearing cheap black suits with thin black ties under long green dusters. Their names are Vincent Vega, white, and Jules Winfield, black. Jules is behind the wheel. Jules.
Okay, now, tell me about the hash bars.
Vincent.
What? What do you want to know?
Jules.
Well, hash is legal there, right?
Vincent.
Yeah, it's legal, but it ain't 100% legal. I mean, you can't walk into a restaurant, roll a joint, and start puffing away. You're only supposed to smoke in your home or certain designated places.
Jules.
Those are hash bars?
Vincent.
Yeah, it breaks down like this. It's legal to buy it, legal to own it, and if you're the proprietor of a hash bar, it's legal to sell it. It's legal to carry it, which doesn't really matter because get a load of this. If the cops stop you, it's illegal for this to search you. Searching you is a right that the cops in Amsterdam don't have.
Jules.
That did it, man. I'm fucking going. That's all there is to it.
Vincent.
You'll dig it the most. But you know what the funniest thing about Europe is?
Jules.
What?
Vincent.
It's the little differences. A lot of the same shit we got here, they got there. But they're a little different.
Jules.
Examples?
Vincent.
Well, in Amsterdam, you can buy beer in a movie theater, and I don't mean in a paper cup either. They give you a glass of beer, like in a bar. In Paris, you can buy beer at McDonald's. Also, you know what they call a quarter pounder with cheese in Paris?
Jules.
They don't call it a quarter pounder with cheese?
Vincent.
No, they got the metric system there. They wouldn't know what the fuck a quarter pounder is.
Jules.
What do they call it?
Vincent.
Royale with cheese.
Jules. Repeating.
Royale with cheese. What do they call a Big Mac?
Vincent.
Big Mac's a Big Mac, but they call it Le Big Mac.
Jules.
Le Big Mac? What do they call a Whopper?
Vincent.
I don't know. I ain't go to a Burger King. But you know what they put on French fries in Holland instead of ketchup?
Jules.
What?
Vincent.
Mayonnaise.
Jules.
Goddamn.
Vincent.
I seen them do it, and I don't mean a little bit on the side of the plate. They fucking drown in a minute.
Jules.
Ouch.
End scene.
Anyways, that was the scene from Pulp Fiction.
I fucking love Pulp Fiction, dude.
Man, that one just...
I don't know how you can have scenes like that, and then man, Pulp Fiction is a weird film.
Yeah, Pulp Fiction it's something special. So, what is your favorite Tarantino film?
That's a tough one. He's got a lot of films that I definitely enjoy. I think it depends on who you are. Because, like, all right, I believe we've talked about Inglourious Bastards a little bit. How that film is a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
It's like pure fun incarnate. I really, really enjoyed that. I never got to see Django or Hateful Eight, even though I really should have by now.
That's perfect, because I haven't seen either of those two movies either.
All right. I know we both watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I will probably say is, like, right now,
Yeah, I mean,
it might be my favorite.
for me,
But maybe that's because I have to rewatch some of his old ones to get a better opinion of now that, like, my taste has kind of developed more, which is something that I feel like is really important for describing Tarantino in general.
yeah, absolutely.
He's got a lot of particular things that he does that you won't find other directors do, and he's got a style that is very distinctly his own. This is something you immediately notice when you watch anything like Reservoir Dogs think Pulp Fiction has this particular energy that you don't find in, like, buddy cop films, essentially. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what Pulp Fiction kind of is at the end of the day,
Well,
and that's why I like it.
it's a buddy criminal film.
No, but shut up. Look, I get it, but
Yeah.
It's weird how he takes something that you expect from the genre and he makes it something so intrinsically interesting just because of his weird character writing. Yeah, like that whole scene is a great example of his weird character writing.
He gets you like into this movie by two dudes in a car talking about hamburgers in Paris or whatever. Like they're just, it's so relatable. You know, it's very very mundane, very relaxed. Then they go to a place and shoot up.
Yeah, it's weird. You go from something completely low stress to something very high stress, and this is something that is like prevalent throughout the whole film too. Is like you have those little moments mixed in with these like really tense moments of just. The thing about Tarantino is he's also created a lot of like iconic stuff as a result of the way he writes.
Yeah.
I mean, the say what again is another like classic moment in Pulp Fiction. And I think that would have been. I mean, obviously, yes, you do have to give Samuel Jackson some credit for it.
Oh yeah.
At the end of the day, there's a lot of like writing there and a lot of directing there that, man, it makes it so funny, despite the fact that it probably shouldn't be.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that's what I appreciate about his style. I mean, we both seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That movie is like very funny, despite the fact that the conclusion should not be as funny as it is.
Yeah. Right. I mean, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's a very like, going into his modern work. It's almost Tarantino went through this kind of period of like of westerns and I mean you saw he had Django Unchained and then he had like the Hateful Eight. And Hateful Eight to me is like it's very inaccessible. It's very like long and it has tons of dialogue and I haven't seen the whole like I've seen parts of it, but it's not a movie that like you want to just go have fun with. But I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was Tarantino getting back to kind of having fun. It's just two guys. It's to me it's a mixture between Pulp Fiction and Inglourious Bastards as a film because you have your two leads and a lot of it's just them kind of like just chilling, hanging out in the cars, talking, watching a TV show and like kind of. I mean, there's a whole sequence where what is it? It's like Mystery Theater 3000 or whatever, where it's like just people talking, like making commentary about the movie, and that's one of my favorite parts of that movie. But it's like, and it's done in such a genuine way that like you're like, wow, this is. I could just see this being real. Like these two dudes just chilling, having a beer, talking about the movie they're watching, and like nothing in my mind is like, oh, this is a movie, even though obviously it's a movie and it's very like intentionally meant to be a movie. But then you go from that to the super cartoonish violence at the end. That's just kind of hilarious to me, which I think is meant to be hilarious because one thing Tarantino does is he likes the happy ending, which is something that I mean we were talking about the Coen Brothers. It's kind of a direct contrast. The Coen Brothers are more they're more somber, more serious, and they do have happy endings in some of their movies, but a lot of time their films have a more kind of ambiguous or unexpected ending. And while Tarantino endings a lot of the time, I mean, once you kind of figure out, like, if you've seen Glorious Bastards, then the ending of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is not totally unexpected, but it's cathartic. And I think Tarantino just he revels in the fun and joy of filmmaking and the catharsis that you can make out of it. Like he takes a horrific person like Hitler and his generals, and he has a whole sequence of a movie where they just get the entire like living like the life completely demolished. I was trying to think of like the most vicious, visceral word to describe what he does to them, and then you go to the Tate murders, and like those are pretty messed up. Like it was these psychos murdering a pregnant lady, and like these people who, they're just like people, and these psychos went and killed them in very brutal manners, and what's funnier than watching those people get destroyed and a dog chewing their face off and being flame thrown in a pool. Like it's just funny from just a historical context and a cathartic context. Like I don't know how the families of the Tates and stuff would react to that movie. Because a lot of time they say like whatever, wishing revenge isn't necessarily the best outlet for emotion after a traumatic incident. But as somebody who's aware of how terrible those people were, the Mansons and what they did, how messed up they were, it's it's so funny to watch these horrific people, like all the piss taken out of them. They're not a threat. They're not serious. Brad Pitt is beating the shit out of them.
I kind of like that cathartic kind of like revenge driven ideology almost. Whether or not that was the intention, I don't know. But I always thought that kind of retooling of history is something that you can have a lot of fun with because it's not reality. You're drifting
Yeah.
away from reality at that point.
I mean,
You're talking about something that is a what if possibilities. You're having fun, And yeah, I know the context of the entire conclusion is actually a very sobering, sad, and not happy thing that occurs in real life. What happened, the murders were not pleasant to think about, but this movie made me think about them in like a very like, that's great kind of way, which is something that I don't think many directors could pull off, and I think that's an important like thing here. Can you pull it off? And it's one of those times where like I feel like Tarantino is one of the only people that can do that, to sort of subvert what you expect and turn it into something else. But like not like a subversion like a Coen Brothers, mind you. Like the way the Coen Brothers subvert you a lot different. Like alright, so like I want the concept of like subversion in media is something that's like it's weird. Like you have a lot of ways you can do it. You can subvert my expectations like a Ryan Johnson, or you can subvert my expectations like a Coen Brothers, or you can do a Tarantino. Tarantino's is like blunt. It's blunt. It's very blunt. It's to your face. It's sometimes not subtle in the slightest. It's very on the nose, and it works. Whereas Coen Brothers, they kind of like they let you, the viewer, create interpretations and feelings and emotions towards what's going on.
Yeah.
Like that's something that I think is really interesting because we have you put us with two different directors here who are a stark slash down the middle on how they handle subversion, like how they change your expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something you mentioned, Ryan Johnson, is he oftentimes subverts expectations for the intentional purpose of subverting expectations. Whereas I feel with something like Tarantino, the reason he subverts expectations isn't to surprise you. It's because in his story that he wants to tell, to make it the most satisfying ending or whatever, or scene or event, he plays on what you expect and then delights you with a surprise instead of just like whatever, this is a surprise. You thought that the water was gonna pour into the ocean, but nah, it's just going into the lake, and there's no reason for it. It's just different than what you expected. That's a weird metaphor, but my point is like Tarantino, he knows how to please an audience while also maintaining a level of quality in the writing, in the acting, in the storytelling on display here. And while like his movies are definitely not for everybody, I mean, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a very long movie. It's another one of those films where you kind of feel like not much actually happens. Like it's very much a movie about nothing in this. I mean, I mentioned Big Lebowski. It has that kind of vibe to it, where it's a couple dudes just hanging out, making their way, but not a whole lot's going on. And it's got those Tarantino cutaways, and it's just enjoyable. It's relaxing, and it's pleasant. And it's funny because it's kind of that does contrast with some of Tarantino's films. I mean, Inglourious Basterds is an example. I love that movie, and I think it's hilarious. But it's very intense. The opening is one of the most intense scenes I've ever seen in a film. There's this scene in the bar with Michael Fassbender and all the Germans and stuff, and that scene's like a half hour long, and you could feel that you could cut that tension with a knife. Like Tarantino's also a master at that tension, but in something like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, not many of those tense scenes exist. It's a very like just you just lay back, you have your popcorn, it's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's a fairy tale almost. Yeah. It really almost has no tension at all in that entire film. You could say maybe until the very end, and then that tension is released really quickly as these people get the life beat out of them. It's kind of like Pulp Fiction in that way, I feel like, although Pulp Fiction has those tense moments as well, like the part where Bruce Willis and Marcellus Wallace are talking, and it's kind of like zooming in slowly on Bruce. There's kind of a tension there. I did want to talk also about Tarantino movies we're not big fans of.
I guess I'd throw it to the wind and say that the two I haven't seen. No, I I can't say that. I can't think of like one that I'm like super not into.
Yeah, here's the thing. I haven't seen all of The Hateful Eight because I couldn't finish it. Hateful Eight to me is probably his worst film in the sense that I find it very, very, very. It's almost like self-indulgent to a fault. It's super low key, right? It's a couple of locations, just people talking to each other, and it's all his writing. And it's very much like Tarantino was like, you know what? I want to show how good I am at writing. It's a little egotistical in that sense to me. And I didn't think the writing was as I don't think the writing in it is as good as Tarantino thinks the writing in it is. And that was kind of my issue. Whereas like I kind of just kept feeling pulled out. And I think that from what I saw, that Samuel Jackson and Kurt Russell, they, like a lot of these actors, they did a great job. And like I'm not going to say the movie's of poor quality. It just did not connect with me in a meaningful way at all. Where I was like, yeah, I want to finish this 3-hour movie. When it's like, I could do other things. I would almost compare it to Martin Scorsese's most recent movie, The Irishman, where it's very much like,
Yeah.
like it's self-indulgent. This is my shtick. Look I can do the mob movie still. And then I didn't feel like Tarantino was really breaking any ground or doing anything new with it, or just trying something different. And like it's kind of just like Tarantino took one of his famous scenes and made the entire movie that. Which is fine, but like it didn't connect with me.
I actually I can see where you're coming from on that. It sounds like a situation where he kind of didn't go quite as far as he could have, and he wanted to focus on writing. But again, that's just going from what you explained to me. Again, I never got to see Hateful Eight, and I still haven't made the effort to try. I don't know. It might be a situation where he wanted to kind of like prove his chops, but in that regard, it's one of those situations where it's like, haven't you already done that?
Yeah, that's my point.
It's weird to want to essentially validate something that's already been validated by the world multiple times over.
Yeah.
Like,
well, to me, it's kind of like, so let's say somebody you make a film, and somebody's like, okay, this is what was good about your film. Honestly, this is gonna be a weird kind of out there comparison, but look at James Cameron, right? James Cameron was always at the forefront of special effects. Titanic, one of the biggest like takeaways from that movie. A lot of people were like, "Oh, it's so impressive when they sink the Titanic in that movie. Like it's one of the most insane effects ever." This is like when it was coming out, people were like this. So what does James Cameron do? He makes his entire next film one giant Titanic end scene. Like it's just special effects. That's all there is to it. There's no other substance. There's nothing. And it's almost to the point where, okay, you got a compliment in this area, and you got it with all your films, with Aliens, with Terminator. So you said, my next movie, that's it. It's just special effects, and all of these other aspects are parts of what make good films. Jumping around, another director, Alex Garland, more recent director, he has a movie called it's with Natalie Portman. Dang it, name escapes me. Anyways, it's about these aliens and stuff. The movie is very visually, auditorially. It's very like.
Wait. I was supposed to say Arrival, but Contact.
No, it's not called Contact. It's like with this bubble, and there's scientists, and they go into the bubble. I can't think of the name.
Are you sure it's not Contact?
It's not Contact. I know that for a fact. Annihilation. Called Annihilation.
Oh.
But anyways,
I don't like that movie.
I hate that movie. But what I will say about it is exceptionally cool in a lot of its visuals and a science fiction vibe. And that's the thing where Alex Garland got a lot of compliments about his science fiction prowess with his previous movies, that he's like, oh, well, this movie is just science fiction in the movie. And it doesn't really have anything else. It's not really good in character writing. It's like when you focus on one aspect, I guess is my point. Like a Tarantino focusing solely on dialogue between characters for his entire movie. That takes away a lot from what makes a film, and it takes away a lot of the variety and the spice from a movie. And that to me is kind of like why Hateful Eight doesn't really land for me, is that like, okay, so that's it. It's just like a bunch of characters. Like honestly, they did break it up on Netflix like into like 4 episodes or something, which I think it works better probably episodically, almost as a TV show, because TV shows can't excel in a lot of any other areas besides character writing. I mean, I've been watching Star Trek, and it's like the characters all they like. You know, you're not going to be impressed by the visuals or the technique or whatever. It's just character. It's all they have to rely on. So there's something to be said about like, okay, character writing works best in this medium, but with films, you have an opportunity to have a beautifully shot, beautifully acted, well-told story with different events, highs and lows. Whereas like something like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's such an amazing looking film. Like every shot, it's just a beautiful film, like through and through. And yeah, it takes its time, you know. It's not like it's not your hyperactive, fast ADHD modern film. But it's effective, and it has variety, and it has these different types of moments. I mean, I think variety is probably the most. I mean, Glorious Bastards is my favorite. Next to, well, I switch sometimes depending on my mood. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or Inglourious Bastards, but Inglourious Bastards is all over the place with different themes and motifs and influences and different characters and jumping around, and like it's very much a film of variety. Where I feel that the weaker Tarantino films are the ones that rely too much on one theme or too much on one subject.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Like, kind of having that focus is more detrimental, and you as the viewer can even notice where his focus was, and you're like, okay, why is this not as good then? Why do you care about only this aspect right now? And it creates like a very like lopsided experience, which I think is important. That like a film is a film, like it's a complete thing. When you focus on just one aspect, you're creating like this dissonance between the viewer and. I'm glad you mentioned Annihilation, because Annihilation is just science fiction, but with nothing driving your interest in the characters or anything like that. Besides this science fiction like bubble that is happening around them. Haha, get it? And it's funny because this came out not far. I forget. Remind me? Did Annihilation and Arrival come out the same year?
I think Annihilation was 2018 and Arrival was 2016.
Was it really 2 years between them?
Yeah.
Wow. Because Arrival is like an interesting, in-depth character study on your main protagonist and another character, and it's also a mystery, and it's science fiction, and it hits all these marks of this level of mystery and intrigue. And then Annihilation has mystery, intrigue, and it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
It doesn't have answers. It doesn't answer any question, and the questions it does answer, they're not satisfying.
Yeah,
and this is an example where Tarantino has this incredible style when he works on everything at once. But I get where it would be frustrating to have it where it's like, we've seen you do everything before. Why is it you felt you wanted to go in that particular direction? And with this one instanced film, because like, as someone who I really like Kill Bill, by the way. Kill Bill's like, I love Kill Bill so much, and that film is a revenge-driven film that also has like a lot more going on. Like, it's got good action, it's got cool characters, it's got some really really cool costuming. I mean, Kill Bill's the Kill Bill like costume is iconic now.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you go from that and then you Inglourious Bastards, and then you follow that up with what would be Hateful Eight, which is, or no, there was another
Django Unchained,
right? Which I heard is good.
Yeah, I gotta watch Django Unchained.
I do too. But question, was it 2 westerns back to back?
Yeah, he did.
It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess like for him, like he did both Kill Bills. He did those back to back. I mean, I guess those are 2 movies that kind of make one movie, but I don't know. There's something I like how Tarantino though. Like, here's the thing: I wouldn't want him to make a movie to please me. Like, I like it that he makes his own films, and there's something to be said about a director that has a vision and executes it, and it's what they want to make instead of what a studio wants to make or what the audience wants them to make, because I think you get the most like authentic films out of that. So like I wouldn't want him to change, for me. Yeah, I'm not that egotistical where I'm like, okay, they need to make everything for me. there's a certain balance to be made where it's like, yes, as a director, you want to make your thing, but also like you want to be able to share your vision in a way that, you know, other people can see why you wanted to make this thing, and like other people can understand. Maybe they don't have to like it, but they can understand what you were going for and why you like it. Which is something I feel a lot of directors, I mean, especially now when, you know, like how movies is very much like a product in a lot of cases. You don't get a lot of these auteur directors anymore, you know, and a lot of like the last bastion of them, you know, the Coen Brothers, Martin Scorsese, Tarantino, they're kind of like not as, you know, they're falling off the wayside a little bit because they're getting up there in age. And I mean, I know Tarantino said he's only going to make 10 movies, but I hope he makes more than 10, because even though like I may not like all of them, I still like that he's making movies and that there's people like Tarantino out there and the Coen Brothers out there doing just unique original stuff instead of just
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
boring,
I'm
bland
sorry.
action blockbuster.
I agree 100%. Because I don't like particular films by someone doesn't mean I want them to stop making movies. I mean, I don't think there's another director I could give an example of that's like quite Tarantino, where like I'm like, you make your own thing, you do that. Even if I don't like it, you do that. Because it's like very him, you know? And that's something that I think is super important. Is self-expression in film is a big deal. And he's got his sort of style that
Oh,
no
yeah.
one else has really mimicked before.
Well,
I mean,
people have tried.
yeah,
I don't know if you've
yeah.
seen that recent Birds of Prey movie.
No, I think you mean the whatever
Oh.
blah 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 emancipation of Harley Quinn or whatever.
Yeah, sorry, that the title kept changing. That very much copies Tarantino's
Yeah,
style.
no, I think that's something very important to take away is he does his own thing, and that's something that these two like examples we have. The Coen Brothers are technically like a team.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to note that that's kind of how they operate. They're very much they go by their own kind of thing, and in the Coen Brothers case, they make something that I always like almost.
Yeah.
Except for now, maybe there's an example I can't think of.
Yeah.
But then
you haven't seen Battle of the Bus? Oh wait, what was it? They had a Hail Caesar or whatever. I've never seen that.
I heard it was good.
Yeah.
I might like it because I love the idea of it being like, you know, a camp sort of what was it? It's like a 1940s or 50s like TV show or movie set, and I was like, that's great. I like that. That sounds like a good time.
But yeah, back to Tarantino. I don't know. I think his legacy is something that'll be remembered as like kind of a peak of pulp, which is funny. He has a movie called Pulp Fiction. That like if I had to describe his genre, it's almost Pulp Fiction. Like it's fun, it's campy, but also extremely well done and authentic, which is something that's so hard to pull off, having like both of these extremes work together. But any final thoughts on Tarantino?
He's a great director who, just because I don't like all his films doesn't mean I don't like him.
Yeah.
He's also not for everyone. That's something that I think is really important to know, is despite being one of the most well-known directors of all time, he's not a director that you will necessarily like or like what he makes. Also, feet. That sums up my entire opinion of him.
Yep. Well, I don't think we need to talk about that anymore. Thank you all for joining us.